Hello, dear ones. In a recent video, I talked about the memorable phrase that Yogananda gave us, seclusion is the price of greatness. And I just sort of gave a broad overview of how seclusion is time alone with God and time to recharge on a very deep inward spiritual level. In this video, I thought to take that a little bit farther and go into how do you actually execute, how do you actually create a seclusion in your life. And I thought to touch on this in two ways. The first one being perhaps more applicable right now in these days, May and June 2020, because many of us are not traveling very much in these days, and it's more challenging to travel, more challenging to find places to go. So trying to do a seclusion at home has, of course, advantages and disadvantages. Among the advantages, of course, is that you're already there. You know where everything is, you have everything you need, presumably. You're sort of in your own environment. That is, of course, an advantage. It is unfortunately also something of a disadvantage, because it is entirely possible during a seclusion to just basically continue your own normal way of life, be caught up in all the typical mental grooves, mental ruts perhaps, that your life runs in otherwise. So if you're going to take a seclusion at home, you have to find a way to break that groove, get out of that rhythm of being in a normal, daily, perhaps project-oriented mentality. One of the ways to do that is to try to meditate longer, more deeply, to try to stay in one room most of the time. If you're anything like me, when you go into the kitchen, you start thinking about eating. One of the ways that I have addressed this in a seclusion is that I will often do something of a modified fast, just a little bit lighter. Sometimes I've gone all the way to just having water or juice, but other times I've just tried to limit it down to maybe one meal a day or something a little more targeted, so that I'm not rooting around in the kitchen all the time. I'm not sort of grazing. That has a way of keeping the energy a little more inward and a little less kind of tied to the body. The other thing that I try to do in a seclusion when I'm not meditating is I try to keep off of any sort of consumption media, would be one way to say this. Electronic media, I think, is the better way to say it, because I will often read spiritual books or spiritual articles, but I will try to, as much as possible, to stay off of things like email or social media, off of the watching movies or anything. We don't own a TV, so television isn't really an issue. And I have actually very seldom personally taken a seclusion at home. So that I'm less speaking from experience on this, but I just try to get off of the groove of daily life so that my energy can be a little bit more inward naturally. Now, the other option is to go away someplace. And I'll just offer a few suggestions in that regard, because you want to go to a place that has the energy of seclusion or the energy of retreat, the energy of a more inward focus. This can be a Catholic retreat house. It can be the meditation retreat in Nirananda village. It can be a number of places. There are such places. You can even rent a cabin or rent a little cottage, especially if it's a longer period of time. Some of these places, it's very possible to just go for a day or a weekend a day and a night would be a kind of a minimum if you're going to go traveling somewhere. But even for on out into a week or two or a month, you can have a place rented that is very helpful. And then what happens is you only take what will be beneficial to that seclusion, beneficial to that time. Now, for me personally, that can end up being quite a carful, because I will take a harmonium, sometimes even a guitar, because I like to chant. I try to stay in silence. That's another, that would be something that would apply both to home and away. But I'll bring some spiritual books. I'll bring a few, I'll bring basic clothes and things, just enough to be comfortable, not enough to be sort of all engaged. I do like to walk, and so wherever I go for a seclusion, I try, if at all possible, to have it be a natural environment. It's really important to be able to get outside, and it's really important to get some fresh air, some sunshine. It's also really important to be in a place where you're not constantly kind of underfoot of lots of different people, because that just has a way of entangling the energy, and you end up trying to sort of avoid them. You don't know if you're supposed to look at them or not talk to them. It's really hard to be in silence around people who are busy talking and who would want to engage you. That's kind of the antithesis of seclusion. It really defeats the purpose to kind of be in that setting. So you want to be in a place that draws you inward, that calls you inward. Many times I've gone to the meditation retreat for seclusion and had just a blissful, deep inwardness. That place has the vibrations of 50 years of meditation on that property. It's very powerful. It's very palpable, tangible. You can feel that energy helping you to go inward. By contrast, occasionally I have tried in other situations where I perhaps wasn't in this country, I've tried going to a place that, is just a resort, a hotel, something like that. And it's okay. It's just that when you're around vacation energy, it sort of puts you in that mode of, okay, I'm just here to relax and have fun. Seclusion is blissful, but it's not always fun. It can be challenging. Diving deeply into the spiritual realms requires energy, requires effort, and having the environment support that is a really helpful and important thing. So those are a few ideas for how to manifest seclusion on a practical level in your life. There's much more that I could get into, but those things will help you to just work with the concept. If it's a fresh, new idea, different parts of the world where we've addressed this topic, people's eyes get really big sometimes, and it's like, oh my, seclusion? It's, it looms as this sort of horrifying possibility, like being sentenced to solitary confinement. It's anything but that. Being alone with God is like being alone with bliss, being alone with the peace that passeth all understanding. It is of an entirely different order than anything imposed upon us. We impose it, if you even want to use that word. We sort of gravitate towards it. When your soul calls you into seclusion, I have friends who've taken seclusion for months together, even 3 months. And it's just, not one friend took seclusion for a year, which is getting a little on the extreme side, I have to say, but if it draws you deeper, you have a lot of scope. When you start thinking beyond a week or a month, you have a lot of scope to explore the inward realms. So it's just an opportunity. And so I suggest these things because we can turn our minds, particularly in these days when things are a little bit unsettled and we're a little bit out of our normal groove anyway, this can be a wonderful time to take a seclusion and dive into it with great energy and great joy. And the opportunities are unlimited. God bless you.